Okay. All right, guys, welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. Just a couple of quick things, and Julie, you help remind me of all the things I'm supposed to tell you. So there's a few things that I wanted to remind everyone, and one thing might have been confusing. So in the teacher email that went out this week, I asked everyone to update their transition students on the flight risk board rather than the transitions board. I don't know if you guys caught that. I wanted it on the flight risk board. And the reason I said that is because they are flight risks. And I wanted us to be able to keep our eyes on them while Julie and I move them all over the place on a different board. So if you'll add them to the flight risk board, and the way that you do that is by actually putting their name and the current class and then the whole dash greater than sign to where either what level or what specific class you think they need to go to, so that we know they're a transition student. And then Julie will copy them all to the transition board, and then we're going to move them around like a chessboard. Last year we did it all on paper, and it was a nightmare. So we're not going to do that this year. All right, Miss Julie.
Yes, that's a relief.
Yeah, so that's why I said that. So I think that might have been confusing, and I just want to take a moment to clarify. Any questions about that before we dive into the Laugh and Learn preschooler thing?
Just to clarify, we no longer touch the transition board.
Yeah, just leave it alone. Just, yeah.
Sorry, I updated. I put like 25 cards on there yesterday.
On the transition?
Yeah.
That's right. That's all right. Okay. All you have to do, Bree, is copy them to the other board.
Put them on the other board, okay.
Yeah. But here's the thing, is because it's a long time. It's 8 weeks. It's longer than that before they move up. Like, it's really the 3rd week in January. That's almost 12 weeks. So I didn't want them living on this board and you feeling like you couldn't really touch it or move it around or all these things while you need to be doing care and feeding, and yet we're trying to figure out where they're going to go. It's really 2 different things, right? Like, one is you guys noticing that, oh my goodness, I need to have conversation and I need to understand what's happening. And then as you finally talk to a parent about it, you are going to need to let us know. So you probably have to update it in both places. Yeah, I hate that. Sorry. But we have to be able to move those cards around like chess pieces. Does that make sense? Like before, we had to leave them in the list by your name because you needed to be able to find them, right? Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to turn them into classes so we know where we're going to move them. So if you already put stuff on the transition board, then just copy it. Don't delete it. Oh my Lord, don't delete anything. Just copy it back. And if you don't know how to do that, let us know. We'll tell you. You can copy a whole list. You don't have to copy them one at a time. Did you know you could do that? Yeah. So like Bree, if you have 25 cards in your list and then there's 3 cards on the flight risk board, add another list with your name on it, copy it, and then just move them together. Yeah.
I think what we're going to have to do is go to the transition board and delete, though, all the cards because they're all old from last year. So, you know what I mean? If Brianna deletes them, well, whatever. We'll work through that process.
I deleted my ones from last year already before I added the new ones.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind, too, we can always tell when a card's been added to the board, so we can tell if it's old or new. Just by looking at it. Okay, any other questions about that? I think that was the big one. I felt like maybe that was confusing because the process was a little different than last year. But this way, you can still pay attention and work with those families, but we can move them around. Otherwise, you'll never find them on that transition board. And you should have seen our papers last year. It was pretty bad. Okay.
Okay, but Kathy, say again. So we're going to put them in the flight risk, but then as things change with that family, or if we add notes to that card and flight risk, we need to also add those notes to the card and the transition.
Yeah, there's a way that you can copy a card back and forth if you need to.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't type it in twice. We do it all the time with previews.
Okay.
Where Julie copies a card on the board and then she takes a look at it, So how about if I set up a process and I just write it all down so you'll know how it'll work? But the first step that you need to worry about is to put them on the flight risk board. And then from there, we'll get them on the transitions board, and then you can do your updates. And then it's not hard to copy it.
Okay.
We'll figure out the exact process. I don't know if we know ourselves right now exactly.
Yeah, we just started talking it through today, but I just know that we need to be able to organize the information differently than the way you're going to want to see it to keep up with it. Or you'll never know.
And Julie's working on that tomorrow morning, so they really need to be in tonight.
Yeah, if you have a chance to put it, and like, just not by 8 o'clock, but she's got some lead work to do too, but yeah, she's going to start looking at it tomorrow morning. So if you take a few minutes and throw those up tonight, that'd be good. Okay, let's dive into preschool. I'm going to share my screen a little bit. Let's see if I'm still learning how to do this every time. Okay, can you see the little welcome sign?
Yep.
Awesome sauce. All right. So I wanted to step you through some thoughts. Some of them are not new, and maybe some of them are. But first and foremost, what a great experience it was for me to watch you guys teaching preschoolers. And I caught almost everybody on the same lesson, which is always so insightful. And I love that age group, and I really, really enjoyed watching you guys lean into all that was going on with those kiddos. There was a lot going on with those. So, for the purpose of the recording, I'm going to mute from here on out for a little bit, and then I'll turn it back on as we want to have some discussions. Oh, by the way, if you could open up your chat boxes.
We texted back, okay.
Just so if you need to reach me, I can see it. Okay, I think you're all muted now. Okay. So, the masterful journey of teaching preschoolers. So I thought it might be good just to start with what our target is. What in the world are we doing on the floor with those 3s and 4s? And I really love this definition. This is not new. We talked about it a couple of years ago. So our target is to create a classroom where preschoolers accept our invitation to be curious, to explore, to connect, to feel, and to solve. And all these skills are skills that predict academic outcomes that most adults want for their children. Many of you may know that some of the material that I've talked about before from preschoolers comes from a book called The Importance of Being Little by Erica Christakis. What preschoolers really need from grown-ups. And this is one of the thoughts she has about being curious, exploring, connecting, feeling, and solving. So if we know this is our goal, then let's take one more quote from Erica here. And here's something she shares in her book. We can solve our teaching challenges quite easily by looking more closely at what preschoolers can and can't do. And our first step is to walk into a classroom and see it from their point of view. And this really struck me because I'm not sure we've really had a deep dive look as a team in the practice of perspective taking of a preschooler. So I want to invite you for a moment to lean into that executive function skill of perspective taking, and let's just see what we see if we're a preschooler. So let's ask ourselves some questions. What does a preschooler see, hear, feel when they enter our classroom? Is it scary or is it welcoming? Does she know anyone? Is it loud? Is it engaging? What's the first thing she sees? What does she hear? Even now, 8 weeks in, what's he expecting? Is that happening? Or something else happening? And then what about you, the teacher? What are you seeing, hearing, and feeling when those little ones enter your classroom? So I want to take both of those and examine them a little bit. So open up your chat box and just start typing the answers to the first sets of questions. Tell me what you think a preschool child is seeing and hearing and feeling when they enter our classroom. Whatever pops into your head, I want you to just type away. Does she see a smile on anyone's face? Is there something for her to do? Are we inviting him to join us, or are we just waiting to see what he does? What does he think about that? How does that make him feel? What's happening in your classroom? What do you think these kids are seeing? Anybody want to share? Right, Julie, hopefully they're definitely putting instruments and puppets out, all of us. I know sometimes it's a quick switch from one class to another, so it might be hard to get something out on the floor. So isn't that interesting? Maybe what they see is chaos from the previous class. Anybody else want to add anything? Okay, a pile of puppets. Oh, here we go. A bunch of stuff's coming in now. Oh, I love that, Laura. So your kiddos really want to share that stuff with their parents. So your class is one where the parents are definitely coming all the way in even for gathering time. Right? Sometimes they're ready to join in. Mary, sometimes they're not. So this all sounds really positive. Think of one child in your class who's having a little bit of trouble transitioning into the room. What do you think they're seeing? How do you think they feel? Oh, I love this. Some affirmation when someone walks in the door, noticing them. So from their perspective, I think what you're saying, Brianna, is hopefully they're feeling noticed, right? Yeah, they're feeling noticed. Yeah, it's good to be seen. Ooh, a lack of space in our tight circle. So if everyone's gathered in, maybe they feel like they don't have a spot. That's a really good one. We need to be noticing stuff like that, right? Maybe they don't feel like there's a space. I know I have one little kiddo that definitely feels the angst if they're the last one into the room. They feel like, wait, everybody started without me. Even if it's not time for class to start, but that's how they feel. Anybody else have that going on with someone? Yeah, right. So this is a skill I want to invite us to really lean into in the next few weeks. As we start to ask ourselves, what is it that a preschool child can and can't do? And I'm going to come back to why that's so important. Let's see if we can take on their perspective more and really lean into what they're seeing and hearing and feeling right away. I think we're really good at that once we're in the middle of an activity, but maybe that just needs to start a little bit earlier. I don't know. Only you will know what's happening with your class there. Now, take a moment and talk about yourself for a minute. I know you can't really do anonymous. Well, maybe you can. Can you do anonymous in this group chat? I don't know. We can practice anonymous. But what about you, the teacher? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel when the little ones enter your classroom? How does that make you feel? What are you seeing? What kind of extremes are in play? Or maybe none. Is it joyful? Do you have a little angst in your stomach? Or maybe maybe you have this sense that, okay, here comes my herd of cats. I get to spend my next 45 minutes trying to get them all into one place. One thing's for certain. We need to make sure that we acknowledge how we're feeling about it, because if we're not feeling 100%, I don't want to say you always need to be excited, but at least looking forward to what's getting ready to happen. It's definitely going to have an impact, right? It's going to slant what you think about what the kids can and can't do, and it's going to slant about what you think about yourself and what you can and can't do. So first thing we want to do is make sure we've got our own perspective. Oh, I love that. Thank you for being so honest, Brianna. Brianna wrote, it depends on the class. I have a different feeling about every class. For those of you who don't know, Brianna teaches 5 Laugh and Learn classes a week, so she's feeling a different specific feeling for each group. It's okay, we won't ask you to tell us which one. Oh, I love this. Mary says, I'm excited to play with them. My biggest challenge is giving them each the afternoon I want to give them. Oh, I love that. Oh, we're going to come back to that, Mary. We're going to come back to that. All right, let's keep going here. It's good stuff. Attention. Oh, okay. So now let's ask ourselves, how you know when you've had a successful class. What is your measuring stick? So everybody type in at least one thing. At least one thing that you know, if that happens in your class, you've had a successful class. Oh, these are great. Singing and smiles when they are sad to leave. Hugging you goodbye. Oh, I know. When they're telling their grown-up how much fun they had. Mm-hmm. One activity where we're all doing the same thing at the same time. Ooh, I love how specific that is. Okay. So you've got a really specific goal in mind. At least once you want to be in harmony. Okay. Good. Good to know. Anybody else want to jump in here? Okay, so I would say that if we're going to measure our success, and we should measure our success every week, not because it's so much about how well we performed, but because we really want to understand where we are in the process of taking kids from where they are to where we want them to be, we need to go back to our target and what that definition was. Remember, our target for a successful class is one where they respond to our invitation to be curious, to explore, to connect, to feel, and to solve. So if we use that as the template to describe success, then here's some things we're looking for. Was there some dialogue? Did anybody ask a question? Even if it's not the question we wanted to ask about the topic we would like for them to stay on, are they in some sort of curiosity kind of mode? How about exploring? Are they exploring instruments? Are they exploring how to move their body? Are they exploring, new friendships? Connecting. How about this one? I love this. What if the only way you could measure a class was by looking at connection? What would you be looking for? How do they connect with you? Did they make a social connection with a friend? Did they really connect with their parent during sharing time? And I'm so passionate about this one because what we know about social emotional development is that unless a child really feels emotionally safe and connected in a group, then that's just a huge roadblock to learning. They have to have that. So I love that connection is a part of this definition. Feel. And I took this next one and I made one line just about the music. We are music education. That's what we do. So when it comes to feeling, oh my goodness, we want them feeling the music, right? What do they hear in the music? What do they see? And maybe the way music is happening and exploding and synergistically being created in the room. How are they moving to the music? How did they decide to make music? And then how about other ways. So tell me this, what could we say is a way we want them to feel? What do we want them to feel when they're in our class? Just one word answer real quick. Everybody type one in. You want them to feel what? I love it. Safe, loved, safe, affirmed. This is great. I'm going to add that. Oh, look at this. Valued, welcomed. Yeah, right? That is a measure of success if a child feels that way. Now, what about solving? If we're using this template, and we are going to use it, what do we want them solving in our class? What do we think about that one? You know, let's think about the other people in the room. How about when there's not enough space in that tight circle? Is that a problem to be solved? So what's our role? We're going to invite them to solve the problem. How are we going to solve that? Oh, and then they figure it out. How about if they don't know how to do something? Rather than telling them what to do, what can we do? We can invite them to try to solve it, and we can be the scaffolding, right? So I love this whole template. Okay, so just some quick ways to define how we can successfully define a successful class. I thought I kept going to, oh, here you go. Now, so you know what the goal is, and you know what to look for to see if you're getting close, but here I think is the real key, the real takeaway from tonight's training. I want to make sure that all of our arrows are moving in the same direction here. Rather than trying to wrap your little group of kiddos around what's supposed to happen in the lesson, I want to invite you every week to wrap that lesson around your class. Just take a moment for that to sink in. Here's one thing I saw over and over again. I saw a whole team of people working really hard on the steps of the process that were outlined in the lesson. You knew the lesson. You knew the steps. You knew what the lesson focus was. You knew what you wanted the kids to be doing. You knew all that. But every now and then, that lesson took precedent over where your class was. I'm not saying that happened all the time. I'm just saying I saw some sneak peeks of that where you were trying to wrap the kids around the lesson instead of the opposite. Taking a look at really where your kids are and how you could take that lesson and just take it right to them. And what I want to suggest to you is that if we can figure out how to do this and do it well without a lot of angst, you know, A, because we practiced it, and B, because we really understand what it means to do that, then this will really be a key to you being a thriving teacher. Because when you're meeting the kids where they are and taking them to the next level, you are feeling like a rock star. Because you are. Because you're totally making a difference. Okay, so now let's talk about strategy. It's great to talk about, that's the plan, but how are we really going to do that? So A, know your lesson plan. Know your lesson focus, know each activity, and know the process steps. You guys are good at this. I saw it. You're working hard, you're studying, you know what's happening, you understand the steps as they're written. Let me say it like that. You understand the process steps as they're written. And the next thing is knowing your class. What can your class do? But what are they still learning how to do? A couple of times I heard phrases like this, and I'm not going to quote them exactly right, but I might say, well, I didn't think my class could do the ball activity, so I took it out. Or I didn't think my class could do the ensemble activity, so I decided to skip it. Or, you get the idea. There was some concern about, I don't think they can handle this, so I rather than fight a battle there, I just went on to the next thing. Hold that little piece in your brain for a minute. Then the next thing we have to do is to take a look at how you can use this lesson, whatever it is. And I'm pretty sure it was the sequencing lesson in almost every class I watched. Lesson 2 of Let's Play. All about sequence. Decide how you can use this lesson to take them to the next level. Remember, you're the scaffolding. And you want to meet them where they are and vary with a challenge. That's the little mini definition of scaffolding. So now hold that right there, and let's re-examine this from how we think about scaffolding in a toddler class. How many times have you seen a parent and a child where we're inviting the parent to scaffold, and she's really looking for him or her to do everything, say, with their sand blocks that she's suggesting? Okay, show me how you can clap them. Okay, can you clap them louder? Can you clap them quieter? Okay, that on the surface, that seems pretty good, right? Like she's totally going through the steps of, varying with the challenge. But when you sit there long enough, sometimes you see, well, the child still wanted to make a choo-choo train, and she really wanted him to be a hammer, or she really wanted him to twist, and he just wants to be a choo-choo train. Or you get where I'm going with this, right? This is kind of what I saw a little bit in some of our Laugh and Learn classes, where you're trying really hard to get the students through the steps in the process, when really we needed to adjust the end goal of that activity to be where those kids were and just figure out how to get them to the next step. So I tried to create an example here. So because the lesson focus was sequencing, there's a lot of different levels of what was maybe needed based on a child or a group of children in a class. So maybe for your group, this lesson, like the goal was just all about, we're just going to experience the sequence. And we're just going to experience the sequence and learn. Oh, and that's not supposed to say world. That's supposed to say, and learn about that word. Sorry, typo on the slide. Or maybe your class just needed to practice the sequence over and over and over so they could begin to really feel it and internalize it, but they were not ready to predict it. They just needed to experience it over and over so they could begin to really, yep, I understand this. This is a sequence. Or maybe your class really was ready to review and remember the sequence, which means they could predict what was going to happen next because they really had it, Does this sound familiar? I mean, can you think about your class and maybe the Grasshopper Park medley? And for some of you, maybe you were so ready to get them to a place where they could regurgitate it back, but they weren't there. Or you wanted them to be able to tell you what was going to come next. Or how about this? You just wanted them to recognize what song was playing, but they didn't know which one was the seesaw or the slide. They were loving it. They knew they were in Grasshopper Park, but they just did not know which song was which. How many does that sound familiar, right? Because they were just all in a different place. So then you can't regurgitate what you don't know the name of. So that plan just kind of went out the window. So my point here is that you got to really know where your class is and where you want to take them. But sometimes you don't know that until you're right in the middle of the moment. Like you think you're going to be able to do X, and you get there and you're not anywhere close to X. You're back over at like letter D. You're way farther than you thought. So what does that mean? How are we going to handle that? Oops. Oh, hold on. One word of caution. We have to be careful not to underestimate preschoolers. They can be so brilliant, right? But here's the thing that kicks us so often is that their development isn't linear. So what you're trying to do is find just the right learning zone for each child in your class, which is where the challenge really lies, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there. So many times we think, well, preschoolers are not going to be able to do that, or my class is not going to be able to do that. Is that really true? Or is it just like they could do up to here, but they couldn't go the rest of the way, or a couple could and a couple couldn't, so I'm not really sure what that means. That whole not linear thing, that's really a challenge. So I just wanted to put that out there and acknowledge that. Okay, but here's some tools for the toolbox. Okay, here are some things that I think can help us get where we want to go to create that experience and then to to be able to meet them where they are and really scaffold with them. Now, before we go any farther, I'm going to unmute everybody for a second. I think I can figure this out. Hold on. Okay, you're all live. So take a few moments and let's talk a little bit about this whole idea. I'm going to back up the slides here. About how to create this experience when your class, you know, we've got a single lesson plan written for the preschool. You know, let's play lesson 2 or around the farm coming up lesson 1 next week. Yet classes are all over the spectrum. Comments, questions, thoughts.
What's the question, Kathy?
Well, I wanted to try to understand more about what you're thinking in terms of, you've got this one lesson plan that's written, I hate to use this term, but I'm going to say generically, as in it's going to apply to every class, but yet I'm saying, oh, no, it doesn't really apply to every class. And here's the strategy that we can start using to adapt it. You know, wrapping up your class with that lesson, what does that really mean? Talk to me about, does this make sense? Do you understand what that means? Do you feel like that's something you're comfortable doing? Do you feel like you're already doing it? You know, any of those things.
I think for me, it makes me think a lot of the those particular activities that really develop over the 4 weeks that we have a lot of in Laugh and Learn, and how sometimes it gives you a lot of latitude, since it does develop, and there are so many ways to do the activity that for some classes you're just going to maybe stick with 1 or 2 ways and repeat them, rather than, you know, take it to the, I don't know, I saw something with the trot, trot, trot. And that's the, I haven't looked at the lessons yet, but that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Is that right?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay. Because I recall that one like developing a lot, and the end being fairly, I don't know, maybe not involved is the word, but it really, it builds, right?
Yes,
so,
there's a lot of layers. Absolutely. A lot of layers.
So yeah, so for some younger classes or classes that don't take it to it as well, you might not take it to that 4th, you know, level.
Right.
You might sit at 3 for 2 weeks and really love it that way.
Right, exactly. I know, like that in the first album we did, Animals Dancing. I love that little ensemble with Frog Kiss.
Yeah.
But I feel like we don't have a lot of time to really develop that one. And, you know, we're just kind of starting to get how it goes, and then it doesn't come back up in the lesson again. But I felt like we were on the edge, right? Like we could have really done something with it. So I started putting it in gathering time. And just doing it with the kids in gathering time. And by the last week, I couldn't believe it. Like, they were really doing it. And what's kind of amazing about this is my class is uber quiet on Tuesday. You can ask Jennifer. I told her they were going to be the opposite. And I was wrong. They're just so quiet in that class. And so getting them all in to participate in an ensemble that requires chanting is kind of a big deal. They just are not usually going to give it to me. But come to find out, a couple of the boys, when they went home for nap time that day, they laid down for nap time and they were repeating it over and over. And I thought, oh my gosh, it totally worked, right? But a lot of times we just don't know it's going to work. But your point is, sometimes you just got to do some stuff over and over, right? Even if you don't have the perfect ensemble, it doesn't matter if you've done it over and over and over. Well, then it does kind of work. Anybody else have thoughts on this? I mean, maybe you're already doing all this and this is just a review, or do you feel like this is really giving you permission to change things up? I'd love to hear that.
I think that my classes could stand with some repeating some of the activities. So, you know, instead of progressing, if it feels like they're just not ready yet, I think I might try things a second time. I don't think it'll take a third time, but, you know, some of my classes, they're quieter and they're not as engaged. Well, that's not really the right word. They're just not as outgoing. So I can't gauge where they are exactly. So,
Yeah.
You know, that might be something to try. I never thought of that before.
Well, I feel like sometimes it's like we have to give ourselves permission to just meet them where they are. And sometimes the only place they are is exactly where we were. Or sometimes it's 2 steps backwards because a whole week went by, unlike traditional school where you might see them every day. I have, you know, to your point, Jennifer, sometimes when I've just repeated stuff over and over, and I think, okay, this is all we're going to be able to do. Suddenly I see, oh, wait, because we repeated it over and over, I really could, like the last time, maybe add one little thing and we get just a little bit farther. And then I feel like that is a huge win, right? Here's the thing I really want us all just to hold on tight and wrap around us and tie into knots, is that repetition leads to mastery. So it's totally okay, even just to start out or for the entire activity, to do it again. Just do it again. And I have even done it twice in the same lesson. I've done it without the parents, and I've turned around and I've done it again with the parents. And Mary, to your point about trot, 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 that's how I make trot, trot, trot work. So oftentimes we're doing it twice in the same lesson. Because I feel like I need to introduce something to them, but then I need to bring the parents in to really be the scaffolding to give them that experience without putting it all on them. Like I was so want them to have those great ensemble experiences, but I realize they sometimes cannot have that higher level experience without the parents right there. So I'll flip activities around. I know a lot of you are doing that too for ensembles. Okay, let's keep going here so I can make good use of your time. Just a couple of things I want to point out that are really good tools for the toolbox. You're all using at least 1 or 2 of these already, but it's always good to look at them as a whole. And the first thing I just have to point out, I know I'm like a broken record about this, is that we are music education. If you don't do anything else, make sure that you're singing, you got your hands on at least 2 instruments, and you're using a couple of tracks to move. Now, why would I want you to use tracks to move? Because when the music is playing, you don't have to vocally lead the music. You can use your voice to engage. And that just not only saves your voice, but sometimes you just really got to have that with those little ones. So remember, this is why the parents showed up. We may have a whole list of other things that we want to be happening in this class, and we do. But the parents signed up because they wanted their child to have a music class, which needs to be different than preschool. So make sure you're inviting them to sing over and over. And that's where the repetition is really key. If they're just starting to sing the song, do it again. Do it a 3rd time. Do it a 4th time until finally you get a little bit more, maybe pitch or words. Some people don't really get much pitch. You just get words. And then I know you're working hard to figure out what to do when you start to run out of time. Just make sure that every child has their hands on at least 2 instruments aside from gathering time during their time with you, because that's the fun for them. And that'll be their first complaint about a class. I didn't get to play very many instruments today. Story time. Here's my other big hot button is the more we can make story time musical with physical touch and really enjoying that close proximity with the kids and giving them a chance to lower their energy by lowering our voice and maybe adding some different kinds of vocal play or melody in there, the better the story time will be, because we need to, A, create this intimate moment, even if it only lasts for a moment, and B, we need to differentiate between ourselves and the librarians. We have such excellent librarians in and around our city and our schools that we really have to, make it different. I will say this. It's one of the reasons when we do that unit, what's it called? On the Go in the summer. I have the hardest time making that book musical. I tend to only read it one time. And then I don't read it the other 3 weeks because there's so many other things in those lessons where we can make music, and that story is just hard to make musical unless we wrote a bunch of songs. Social development. You want to really work on building the development of your group socially to get to a place where that group is one that takes care of each other. And it can be everything from, yes, making a space, or B, automatically having empathy. Or how about this, when a little person starts to wander, another little person says, come on, come back, come sit with us. Or they want to make sure everybody has a partner. Oh, so-and-so doesn't have a partner. I'll be your partner. Because a group that starts to take care of each other is a group that, A, is going to be a lot more confident, because they feel secure, but it's also going to make it easier for you. Then you're only worrying about 1 or 2 children that are maybe struggling in an activity instead of trying to take care of 8 different sets of needs. Let's do a little brainstorming, and I'd love for you to write this in the group chat, because if you do that, then it'll save at the end of the recording. But let's brainstorm for a minute all the jobs we like to give the kids in our class. So a job is when we, give them some meaningful work, something to do. It can be, I don't know. You tell me, what do you give your kids to do when you need for them to have a job? Yeah. Sure, collect the instruments. Giving instruments out, instruments away. Yeah, Mary, I love this one. You shared this with me when we talked. She likes to give this one little boy the responsibility of keeping track of who hasn't had a turn yet. Make sure everyone's had a turn. Love that. I used it the other day. Thanks to you. Thank you for that. What else? Yep, invite a friend to join the group. One who's at the gate. Oh, I love that. Something about peer pressure instead of coming from the teacher, right, Julie? That's a great one. Sometimes I'll have them choose where they want, who's going to choose where our story blanket goes today, or who remembers what book we're supposed to be reading, and then they remember, and then they get to be the one to choose it off the shelf. So story blanket and storybook person. Anything else jumping out at the page? I'm thinking back to that game we did in the spring, the In My Garden game. Pickety, pickety.
Buttercup.
Buttercup, there you go. How many fingers do I hold up? That had so many parts and pieces that game was fun because I could give almost everybody something to keep up with. And then everybody felt so in charge, right? They all sat up a little bit taller and they paid more attention. Oh, I love this one, Jennifer. Ask them to show their grown-ups where the shoes go. Yeah, that's great. I think we all do, other ones. We're all asking for invitations or inviting kids all the time to tell us, well, how should we move? Or, how can we sing hello? And I mean, in a way, that's a job, right? Let's choose what we're going to do for the group. These are good ones. Okay. Creativity. How can you, look at Miss Laura. Co-leading sharing. Okay, Laura, you're gonna have to tell me more about that. Can you talk to us what that means? What are you doing?
I've been just kind of inviting them to, we, rejoin, hug and sing together a little bit. But then I asked them to come up to the front of the room, and I'm explaining a little bit of what we're doing in the lesson. So it's kind of like it's not me telling the parents, it's all of us telling the parents. And just them being close, like they're with their parents, then they're with me again, but the parents are in the room, and then they go back to their parents for the activity.
Mm.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of like the discussion part of sharing time happens where they're with me and we're kind of discussing it and telling the parents together.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. That's so brave.
It doesn't always work. But when it works, it's nice.
Okay, well, I think that she gave us a good lead-in into our next bullet point, which is creativity. Yeah, that's really creative. So, you know, sometimes the challenge is all in how you can creatively adapt something, but unfortunately, sometimes it's happening right then. It's not like you were able to think it through, right? So, you know, one challenge I want to give you guys as you're moving into the farm unit is to think about how you can adapt trot and around the farm for your class, because it is going to come up all 4 weeks. What do you know about them? If you have trouble recognizing songs, well, what are you going to do? Is there a way to sing that melody more often? Can you put that melody or those words in and transition with other activities so that they're really, really familiar with it? I don't know. Every one of your classes is different, but I want to invite you just to dream about what you could do with just that one song that would change the experience for your class over the next 4 weeks. And if you have a total breakthrough idea, we would love it if you'd share it in the Facebook group so we could all, you know, borrow it. The last 2 tools in the toolboxes are ones we've talked about a lot, right? It's all about living in the moment. And sometimes that's just really hard. A, because we're physically tired, or B, because we're having that moment of discouragement where it is just not going like we thought. And that's when the last one is so key, right? If it's not going like you thought, then the question to ask yourself is, what's happening and how can I lean into that? And I saw it with Mary. So Mary was teaching, I don't even know what activity that was. All I know is that every child in the room wanted to throw their feet up in the air. Down by the station. Was that it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They were doing movements for down by the station. And she was committed to get the movements, but all they wanted to do was throw their feet over their head. So guess what? It was feet over the head for parts of that song. And at one point I thought, what is going to happen here? But because she leaned in, you know, the whole scaffolding, oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to do what you're going to do. And then building on that, because she really leaned in, it really worked. And it was really fun. The parents got a kick out of it.
It was fun.
Yeah. So, but sometimes that's really hard. It's like that lap bounce in Sing and Play. I know I've told you guys this story. I really don't like Peter Pickle Pumpernickel lap bounce from Busy Days. Like, this is the summer camp version from years ago. Like, I really don't like that lap bounce. But, you know, someone had coached me, if you'll just lean into something, if you don't like it, you'd be surprised by what happens. So one day, I did it no less than 12 times, because it wasn't until time number 6 that a child started to giggle. And then on 7, half the class was giggling. And by 8, the parents were giggling. And by 12, we were rolling. You know, and it was a good lesson for me. It doesn't really matter if I like it. If it's age appropriate, the kids love it. And it's just important. It's important for me to let go of what I don't like and lean in. So I hope you can be encouraged by that. Anybody want to add any other tools for the toolbox? You know, what's something that's a great tool for you that we could add to this list? And maybe if you don't even want to add one, is there one here that you'd like to try this coming week, first week of farm? Something you want to really work with?
Word jobs.
Yep, me too. Word jobs.
Yeah, that whole conscious discipline, it's just true, isn't it? I just need to keep remembering. That book is true. I need to read it again.
I had 2 things. So the one thought is just especially for anyone who hasn't taught before, just that you can sing Cows in the Kitchen to oh, what's the song? I don't know the original song. I just know cows in the kitchen, moo moo moo. Skip to my Lou, right?
Yes.
Lou, skip to my Lou. That's what the original is. Okay.
I'm typing it. Cows in the kitchen, sing to Skip to My Lou, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other tool, the silliness. Like this age group is so silly that I think it's I don't know. We had a very silly night tonight, and I found like the more I acted a fool, the better the class went. So sometimes just like embracing that silliness is helps with the connection and the other things that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Anybody else want to add to that? Other things that are really working? Yeah. One thing that really worked for me is just slow things down.
Yeah, so some of my classes really like to move. They like to move dangerously. Bam. And so I started, I think it was since the class that you observed, or maybe it was the one before, I don't remember, but somebody suggested doing an activity down on the floor, like really small and like wiggling fingers for like just the hello song. And it was funny how just doing it that way for the hello song set the tone for the rest of the class. And so we started small and we got bigger, but it's so much easier to get bigger if you start small. You can always add more. Taking away is so much harder. So I've done that in almost all of my classes for now, 3 weeks at least, maybe 4. And I don't know if it's the gelling of the class because it's the second unit, but it's really seemed to work, starting small and then getting bigger and then taking it back down when the parents come in. So it's like, there's a peak and then a diminuendo. I don't know.
What I love about that is that that's becoming what they're expecting to see when they walk in the room.
Mm.
Back to that question we asked in the beginning. If you've been doing that for several weeks, now that's what, from their perspective, they're like, oh, we get to play this game again. We start really small, and then we get bigger, and then we get small again. Like, to a preschooler, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. They know it's coming.
Yeah.
That's so cool, Jennifer. I've done gathering time like on our stomachs, like into the circle a couple of times, like some of our activities that we've done. I hadn't thought to like just do that every week. I kind of like that idea.
I mean, it might not work every week. You might have a week where you have to shake things up because things have become stagnated, but I don't know, because this is only the 4th week, right? But I think that it's working for me. So whoever told me that, whoever gave me that helpful hint, thank you.
Jennifer, I remember you and I had that conversation, and I
oh, that's right, it was you.
Yeah, because of just building physical touch, like was what it all started. Like, let's put our fingers together, wiggle them, and then we're all touching each other. Mm-hmm. And so I started with that being the motive, and then I realized there were so many more benefits to it I didn't even realize until I saw it in play.
Yeah. Well, it's worked for me.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Love it. These are so great. Gosh, you guys are great. I can't tell you how much fun I had watching you. In fact, my goal is to do this. I just have to find someone who's much better at video than me, is to create a highlights reel and feature activities from each teacher, because there's something for all of us to be learning from every single one. I got so excited the more I got to see people. And I want to give you that glimpse. Now, you can see them all. I put them all in Dropbox. But I know it would be a lot better, easier, whatever, better use of your time if I could figure out how to create the highlights reel. So it's a goal. Hashtag goals. Can I write that for Julie? Hashtag goals.
You can.
There we go. All right. Moving on here, because we're past our time. When you thrive as a teacher, we retain students. And when we retain students over time, that's when we really have an impact. And when we have an impact, we can change lives. So music is the means, change is the goal here from the much, much larger perspective. And I just can't say enough about how much I appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you for investing your life in a preschool child. Thank you for putting their needs ahead of your own. It's selfless work, but the rewards are so great. So great. Anybody have any questions or anything they want to add here as we wrap up? Any kernels of wisdom you want to share? How about if I give you an open invitation? As you think of things that you think would be helpful for someone else, or even if you just have a question, please share it in our Facebook group. Like that's a gold mine because we can refer back to it. And I don't have to remember where it was in an email that I can't ever find again. Okay, I went over time. I'm sorry. I really tried to be done by 9:30, but I wasn't. So let me wrap up tonight. I've got some new stuff coming. We'll talk about it later. A new gift certificate process, a new process for the instrument boutique, and of course, who doesn't love the farm? The next 4 weeks are going to be so fun on the farm. So enjoy that. I can't wait to see you all again. I think I'm going to come watch you teach 3 times a year now because that was such a blast. I just want to be a fly in the wall in everyone's classroom. So thanks again, you guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.